So this brings us to the Churchills, because Jennie Churchill, which is down here. Jennie Churchill is down here. So her father, let's go into this. Oops. So yeah, Jennie Spencer Churchill there. This is her father, who is Winston Churchill. Her grandfather was Randolph Churchill, who was married to Pamela Harriman also. Amongst, I think he had several wives. And he was the son of Winston Churchill. So yeah, the Churchills, there's a International Churchill Society. Again, good structure. They do conferences, and there's going to be one in Washington in October. I haven't seen really the speakers yet. Let's see, here was the International in 2023 in Edinburgh. Well, very interesting. And when he was talking about that, this is a guy from a Navy guy. And I'm like, yeah, look at John Paul Jones, the American Navy. So, because the Paul family is also in my family tree from my father's side, his mother. So my paternal grandmother, which is the Dickinson as well, which we'll get into here. So there you have Jennie Churchill within the International Churchill Society. And again, I'm like, okay, but you Churchills, a lot of skeletons in the closet. And, Winston Churchill is this great hero of World War II of the British people, but he was part of the imperialism that produced World War II. So, it's kind of like, well, you stepped in to help fix the problems that your family had been creating, or had their hand in creating. He had been a journalist in World War I and in India, and very much a supporter of the British Empire. So this is when he died. This came out, the BBC, I believe it was, did a whole, his life. And that's kind of the politically correct, and I mean, rightfully so. It is, when he dies, I mean, you don't go to a eulogy of somebody and start going, oh, let me tell you about the skeletons. No, I mean, that's not the time or place. That was kind of one of the things that was in Mary Richardson Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy's second wife. That was kind of like, what's going on here, at her memorial service, at her eulogy, which her family didn't come to. So anyway, Jennie Jerome, she was one of the original dollar princess. This was the British aristocracy had been overspending and over indebtedness for many, many, many generations. So now that the Americans, with the Western expansion, were making and the robber barons were making all of this money and coming to power, they had great opulence. This is the Vanderbilts, the Astors. This is the rise of New York high society, replacing Boston and Philadelphia and the old founding fathers. Washington, D.C. comes in a little bit later, because this is the end of the 1800s. Washington is not a very, pretty much the Wild West. Not quite with all the buildings and the nice things that you have today. It was some place that really they would come and vote and then go back to their plantations or back to their homes. I mean, that of course, coming from the far west was much more difficult than coming, say, from Maryland or Virginia or Delaware. obviously. You didn't have airplanes back in those days. It was wagon trains and horses. So, one of the interesting things. So here you definitely have the politically correct branch of the Churchills, and quite frankly, cashing in, okay, not making much money. Here, as I say, you had this was interesting, but you know, like these conferences, I'm sorry, like, can you liven them up? This guy, he's very knowledgeable, maybe, but put you to sleep listening to his spiel. Here, so I'm kind of like, buddy.
I ordered 200 hand-forged knives to my dorm room and built a Wix website to sell them.
They had finally cornered him. After a year of terrorizing villages, seizing merchant ships, and even an attempted kidnapping, the pirate who sent the people of the British Isles into a condition bordering on insanity was finally about to meet his fate. Hundreds looked on from the shore as a ship that haunted their nightmares was torn to pieces by the guns of the mighty British Navy, with half the crew dead or wounded, and the ship sinking fast. Most other captains would have cried uncle, but the man on board that notorious ship wasn't most other captains. He was John Paul Jones, father of the American Navy, and he had not yet begun to fight. I'm Joel Cook, and this is Rogue History, Rebels and Revolutionaries. So how does one of the most notorious pirates in British history become an iconic hero of the American Revolution? Long before he went toe-to-toe with Britain's powerful navy, the young man born as John Paul was just a simple Scottish merchant ship captain who committed a murder. Or two. Let me set this. Take, okay. Sink.
Yeah, so he didn't commit a murder or two. That is false. My father, when I found in a secondhand bookstore, I always end up in a secondhand bookstore, I said, oh, I found a biography on John Paul Jones. And he said, oh, who is it written by? And it was Morrison, Admiral Morrison. And I said, and he said, oh, good, that's the best version, the most accurate version. Oh, my father, who's a walking encyclopedia. So, yeah, that's not true. He didn't kill anybody. No, so he did. There was somebody who got a flogging from him, and the guy later died, but it was not from his flogging. And so it was just one person there, and it wasn't from his flogging. And that was, he did leave, I forget where in the Caribbean he had been, and he went back to where his brother was. I think it was in Virginia. And, had to leave his bounty behind. But yeah, no, he didn't kill anybody. But yeah, I mean, rags to riches. So because as I say, when I go back through the Paul family, because that's through my father's mother, and because her mother was a Dickinson and her father was a Paul, and the or from those families. So anyway, the Paul family have only gotten back. I haven't gotten back where there would be a connection with John Paul Jones's family, because the Jones was added in because he was a pirate. So I'm not sure there, but the Dickinson, this is ancestry. So this gets into, it's really interesting, with the House of Churchill and the Churchill connections. So here is just, as I say, the Churchills, this is the most recent. The House of Churchill, that was started in 1685. So that's actually before the Bathursts. But here again, you have through Winston Churchill. So this is, where is Arabella? Not sure. I think that's a great-granddaughter. Where is she? So this is, where'd she go? I forget where she, here she is, Arabella Churchill. So yeah, she is a granddaughter. So she's like hippie and, black sheep of the family, totally. She had this Glastonbury festival, which was kind of like a Woodstock when it was started. Here's her second husband, and I thought his sounds like a very nice guy.
Hi, welcome to Learn to Juggle with Haggis MacLeod. I'm Haggis MacLeod, and this is Learn to Juggle in 3 easy steps. So, before we get started with the juggling, let's think about what we're going to use. Today, well, it's Somerset, I'm going to use an apple. But you can use other fruit, just stay away from the prickly pears and the pineapples. You could use dog balls, you could use tennis.
So what's nice about this, he's a juggler, and he posted this on YouTube, and he asks for some donations. He does it to promote donations for this Glastonbury festival that's still there. It was a Woodstock type of thing, but it's gone totally wacko and woke. Oops, come on.
Now let's go to the UK. We've had the orgy of hate at Glastonbury Music Festival. Pascal Robinson Foster, I got to say, I'd never heard of him until this week. That's the name of the dude who started the Death to IDF chant and other chants on stage, enthusiastically backed by the crowd. We saw plenty more political statements, all in the one direction. Douglas, how do we begin to understand these young, privileged people at a music festival really having no empathy for people very similar to them who were slaughtered at the Nova Music Festival less than 2 years ago?
It's astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah.
the sort of instant.
So I won't play the whole thing there, but here it is again. This family, here's just a couple of generations that kind of all over the map. You do have a name within Britain to stand up and show some initiative and some leadership. Here is, I like this. Did Nicholas Soames threaten Princess Diana before she died? So, you say something, your name gets out there in the news. So you can use it for good or for, negative PR. Your choice. So I did send, I contacted Jennie Churchill. I sent an email through the International Churchill Institute Society. The headquarters is at GW Library here, right near where I work, at International Square. Minimum wage job, I can barely keep a roof over my head. Put me in charge of your conference in October, and I'll blow you away with some people I'll get there speaking at it. See, it's all about resource allocation and who you hire for what jobs. So here, the Churchill Ball Washington family tree. So again, the Churchill family, as I say, is really interesting when you go back throughout it. So there's a connection to George Washington here. That comes through Ball. So that, I forget, that was like a great aunt or something, I believe. And here, I'm not going to go into, I didn't mark her, but she is someplace in here. This goes down through, this is kind of too small. So, here's Clarissa Ball, 1825. You have the Ball family here that goes through. And that comes down to Jennie Jerome. Her mother was a ball. She was a ball. And the father was from the Jerome family. And his goes through into the Wilcox family. I think that's the connection with the Wilcox family. Because Church Ball in Washington, we have Arabella Churchill over here, Jennie Churchill, we already saw them, and the Clarissa Ball. So Cornelia Guest is a cousin. When she came out, Deb of the Decade, Cornelia Guest, and the whole, now she's the Naked Truth, she said she was the closest thing that the United States had to royalty with her connection to Winston Guest. Well, first, Winston Guest, the Churchill family is not royalty. They do have the nobility, aristocracy, but they are not royalty. So she wants to claim, and my also point with Cornelia is, because Cornelia was at my class in Foxcroft, excuse me, Cornelia, we're a republic, we're not a monarchy. So we don't have a queen. So you started the narcissism epidemic and all of this, elitism. Now, you were not alone in all of this. Of course, there's Nancy Reagan, you got J.R. Ewing and Dallas and Dynasty. I mean, I loved it in the Narcissism Epidemic book. They said, yeah, what brought down the USSR was not Reagan and Star Wars, any of the political stuff going on. It was because the Russian women saw Dallas on TV and they said, we want mansions like the Ewing women. And that's what brought down the communist regime in Russia and gave rise to the oligarchs that rose to power. Yeah, so once again, not positive movement forward in what's going on there. So anyway, there's Cornelia. So yeah, these are, I believe, is that the father and son, or is that brothers? I forget to look at the date. But yeah, that's the either father and son or brothers. With Cornelia's line, with the Guest family. That's Ivor Guest. He was the money was a Welsh industrialist. So again, the industrialist. Here's the Capote Swan, CZ Guest, and there's Cornelia. Now, Cornelia, her godmother and godfather were Wallace Simpson and Edward the Eighth, or no, is it Edward the Seventh? I forget. Let's get these. The Seventh, Edward the Eighth. Yeah, there's so many Henrys and Edwards and all those Williams and stuff like that. So it's confusing. It's like, which one you're talking about? So there we go through. This is Soames, the Soames family. Oh yeah, Pamela. This was a harem. Oh my God, she was a Digsby. British family. Okay, yeah, that woman, I think one of the guys said she's seen the ceiling of every wealthy man in town. Being polite, saying, yeah, she sleeps around on her back. She made her way. Yeah, so once again, having it all women, professional women, did you use your brains or your body to get where you were? Because she was one piece of work. And a Capote Swan. So, she was the exact opposite of Jennie Jerome, who was from the United States and went to England to do her things over wild oats and how should I say it, be a courtesan. And Pamela, she's from British aristocracy who ends up sowing her wild oats in Washington and making her mark on the world that way. So that's the Churchill family there. Now, when I was as I say, the Churchill family was fascinating. So this is with, because it gets into my family tree as well, with the Wilcoxes. So, because there's the Dickinsons, so you go through the Dickinsons and then the Wilcoxes. So the Dickinsons, the common Dickinson with the Wilcoxes and the founding fathers, Dickinson, because as I say, that's through my father's mother. And did I get that wrong earlier? I forget. I'd have to look at my family tree. My family tree is in here. Where did we get to? Curtis Parker, and yes, so William Wade, Parker. Oh, that's his family. I don't have her family. I didn't have her family in there. That gets into the Wilcoxes. So, as I say, this is another thing. It was the women who did all of these family trees, and this is before internet and didn't have ancestry.com and everything to put all of this together and look at this stuff and, manage society from who everybody's married to and what everybody's been doing. That's what a socialite does, is not sitting around at a country club. So anyway, as I say again, I can't remember her father, her mother. So, but through the Dickinson line, through her family, and then the intersectional of her family with Dickinson, and then my grandfather, Wilcoxes. So you have the Wilcoxes. So the Dickinson, the common, goes back to 1541 with John Dickinson, and that's in there. And then you've got the Wilcoxes with the Churchills family, again, going back, because here are the Dickinsons you have there, but the Wilcoxes through this line. You have the Wilcoxes here and the Wilcoxes there. So through the Churchills, there, I haven't found a common Wilcox, because this Wilcox, that's Richard Wilcox, 1500 to 1561 in Lincolnshire. And this is all in the pretty much the Midlands of England, where they're coming from, which is what I've really been looking, because I'm interested in the Puritan, because you have two Thomas Wilcox. Thomas Wilcox, Admonitions to Parliament, 1571. That was co-authored with John Fields. And John Fields' daughter, I believe, married Thomas Wilcox's son, or Thomas Wilcox. Maybe it was Thomas Wilcox. But that's all I can find about the family there. But so you have that Thomas Wilcox, who's these are one of the original documents of the Puritan movement, and then in 1666, another Thomas Wilcox, A Choice Drop of Honey from the Rock Christ. It's another important document that was just at the time of the Great Fire of London. So that's really my interest in the Wilcox family in this region, because you had tons and tons of Wilcoxes in the Massachusetts Bay and Delaware that came over. And, then the Wilcoxes went from the north and the south. But so you have Thomas Wilcox, 1525 in Suffolk County. So again, as I say, I haven't found a common ancestor there on Ancestry, but there are, you know, it's both the Wilcox families in that area. So it'd have to, and then also, you know, Ancestry doesn't give you everything. So I'm interested in, you know, just all really, you have to get a lot of documents. It's really, you know, interesting with all of the papers and what you can find. You really have to get into archives to get a whole picture here, but it is fascinating. And just, you know, as I say, how their place in history and the development of the British Empire and the American Empire. I mean, good and bad. Got drain the swamp here at the bottom, because in my family tree, let's get to the present. Yeah, my parents are passed. My elder sister, she passed away. But then her children, his wife, my niece and her husband, who, because they, so my sister, American, her ex-husband is Dutch. Bear was born in Haiti, but he grew up in Colombia, and they're both Kira and Bear are in Holland now. They both have Dutch nationalities, American Dutch nationalities. Bear, in fact, poor kid. Oh, yeah, okay, that, lots of skeletons in the closet that everybody wants to shut me up about. But yeah, he was born in Haiti. He went to the Haitian embassy because he said, well, I'd like to represent, he's a very good rider, horse rider. And I'd like to represent Haiti in the Olympics. And they said, you're too white. You're mistaken. We're a Haiti embassy. Go back home. I was like, that's racist. That's racist. And discrimination. He would be the entire equitation team at the Olympics representing Haiti. So cut their nose to spite their face. And then my niece, she was born in Colombia, so she does have a Colombian nationality, because he can't compete for Colombia because he doesn't have a nationality, a Colombian nationality, even though he grew up there. That's where he lived most of his life. Then my two sons, who have been canceled, just like me. Only thing that keeps me going and fighting. Yeah, everybody wants me to do some. I love my sister, my younger sister. Just give up. Admit defeat. Admit defeat. Like, what are you suggesting? I go and throw myself off a bridge? Inciting suicide is illegal. So, yeah, we get into, here's some more. This is of the Dickinson Wilcox family trait. So here, yeah, here's the Dickinson again. This was the Dickinson, the one that I had talked about. This was with Bradley Hall. Richard Dickinson. He had been a magistrate of Bradley Hall, and this was from 1526 until 1547. So that's of the ancestry of founding father John Dickinson, and in my ancestry. So here we have what I wanted to show here was, you know, at this time, so we're getting into the Earl of Essex, Elizabeth I. Here was a bridge that was built in the late 16th century by the Earl of Essex, a favorite of Queen Elizabeth. King Edward School, Maurice Hidman. So, you know, at this point, the nobility, I mean, it's not just about getting territories and invading this and wars. You did have, how shall I say, a culture that was being developed at the time, architecture, you know, bridges, infrastructure. He was a magistrate. This is, oh, what's interesting about this really gets into my examination of John Dickinson and the Dickinson family and the the development of legal systems within Britain and the United States. And this kind of, because at this point in time, and when you get into the Magna Carta and everything that's developing and all of the ideas of democracy and a constitution and challenging the divine rights of kings and all of these ideologies that are developing, it really is parliamentary and amongst the nobility. And the people, the working class, the lower classes are the peons. You know, the upper crust and what's going on in London and in Parliament does not concern themselves with the lower classes and the administration of justice. That is happening at the local level. And this is the magistrate. And that's what I'm really interested in. There's still a lot of questions I have about what's going on and the development, because we're talking several hundred years there. But this is really the focus of what I've been looking at in terms of the current situation within, I mean, particularly in the United States, but within all of these different democratic systems and constitution, whether it be a monarchy or a republic. But let's just take the United States as the example. And this gets into Gonzales Linehan versus USA, 2011. This is the Inter-American, Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And the American defense of their failure to protect was that they didn't have control over the lower courts at the federal level. And this is precisely where the crux of the question and the issues lying here is, okay, so at this level, at the local level, is there does that obligation to protect, you know, does that exist or does that not exist? And if it doesn't exist, then how does the federal government justify its legitimacy? Because if it's just at this local level and the federal government, like in the British system in the 1500s, or even you can go back 1200s, or even today. I mean, I have that question for the British system at present. I'm not familiar enough about all what's going on, but this is really where I'm looking at in the responsibility to protect and the argumentation there, and where the problems lie from a political perspective in this issue of the local level and how this is being, how the rights of litigants are being applied here. Because if you have the rights of litigants, and it's got to be applied here at this level, and if it's not, and then at the federal level, they're washing their hands, well, where's your legitimacy? I mean, I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but that's really the crux of Gonzalez Linehan versus USA. And, you know, where I'm challenging the American, well, this is all in theory because nobody helped me get them into court, and I want answers there. But that goes to the focus of where I'm challenging Gonzalez Linehan versus USA. Gonzalez Carino versus Spain, similar situation, but it's much clearer there because the Spanish Constitution is 1978, 200 years after the Americans, and it's utopian. I mean, I wish I had, my craziest idea is throw out the U.S. Constitution and let's put one in like the Spanish have, and ooh, Lord, let me go to town on that one. You guys are going to be, oh, have you assholes running circles around trying to figure out how to defend yourself there. So, as I say, I got more questions here than I have answers, but at least I know where my questions are. That's in figuring out where the problems is and where the solution is. Figuring out what questions to ask is the first important thing. So anyway, I go really clockwise here from 100-Year War, and that sends us into the 1500s, development of cultural, the identity of English culture and British culture, and how that then the bastards of the British go to the Americas and wreak havoc on all of those, with all of those ideas, and then how we get into the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and World War III, where was that? World War I, World War II, and now we're headed towards World War III. So, yeah. So that kind of finishes the Churchill-Wilcox-Ball connections. Here, this is Duke of Marlborough, because the Churchills, this is their title was actually Duke of Marlborough. So that is the history, kind of interesting history of their family. But again, you know, in these patriarchal systems that the feminists, we just have to get rid of the patriarchal system, and then everybody's going to be liberated and we're going to all live happily ever after. You know, there was a sense of duty to one's family, and not just the immediate family, but generations, and bringing honor to the family name instead of dishonor. Pretty much what everybody's been doing these days, either with their horrible treatment of other people, or all the drugs, sex and drugs and rock and roll. Because we'll get into that with the next. I mean, Cornelia Guest, yeah. Doug Shar, son of Dwight Shar, billionaire Dwight Shar, with lots of lawsuits against him for all sorts of stuff. Doug said to me, oh yeah, the last time I saw Cornelia, she was doing a strip tease on a baby grand with lines of cocaine all over the place. That was back in the 80s. I was like, yeah, it's really why I left the United States. I'm like, this is not life. This is what's so crazy about my divorce decree. It claims that I was a drug addict who went to reform school. I'm like, Foxcroft and Cobham Hall. Excuse me, you guys should be upset about that jurisprudence. As upset as I am. I'm like, screw you, how dare you? Now I want reparations for defamation of character. Reparations for slavery, reparations for defamation of character, reparations for destroying my global expats project, because that's what why my husband was flipping out and trying to kill me. I mean, this is, the all of these feminists about Sharia law and the plight of poor Arab women who can't work outside the home unless they don't have the permission of their husbands. I'm like, you hypocrites! That's the story. That's my story in Spain, and look how you're handling all of this. Well, I mean, I'm tired of that hypocrisy. I mean, I'm out Colonies. That's one of the worst. So anyway, we'll get into her when I get into the nonprofit.